You're listening to the Parents of Hardworking Teens podcast, episode 120, where I'm going to share how the 80-20 rule applies to your teen and their exam or assessment results. In particular, I'm going to share one very practical action that you can take with your teen if they have just had or are about to have any exam or assessment results back. One action that'll give you some really important information in how to have your teen get more marks more easily in every future exam or assessment that they sit. I'm Katie Jones, and with over 15 years in education as an award-winning high school teacher, international external examiner, and as a study coach, I've helped thousands of students skyrocket their results and confidence. And this podcast is where I share all my insights, tactics, and tips with you, the parent, so you can help your hardworking teen get happy, smart, and successful in their study, and have you both enjoy the journey along the way. This is the Parents of Hardworking Teens podcast. Hey VIPs, how are things going? I hope you and your teens are really well. I hope you are getting all set for the upcoming holidays and Christmas and whatever you might be celebrating your end. This is going to be our last episode for 2024. I cannot believe that we are nearing the end of another year. I'm genuinely starting to panic a little bit at how fast time is going these days. I feel like I'm just on the cusp of starting to understand what a midlife crisis is, where you realize that time is just whizzing by before your eyes. Do not worry, I'm not about to have a crisis, but I am for sure thinking carefully about how to make the most out of life. And seeing as rock solid study is a big part of my life, that thinking for sure includes you and how I can best help you and your teen. So before I dive into this episode, I want to ask for any feedback or requests that you would like to share. I would really love to hear all of it. Could be in relation to the podcast, could be in relation to any online events and webinars that I've held, or the 10WGT program, the training, the coaching that I provide. I would love to know what has been most helpful and why. I'd love to know what you'd like more of, what you'd maybe like less of. I'm up for all of it because I always use this break to plan out next year. And as a natural born planner, it is one of my favorite things to do. And my aim is always to give you more of what you and your teens really want and need. And the best way for me to do that is by you telling me what those things are. My kind of catchphrase that I always share with the students that I work with and for you as the parent is the more you ask, the more you get. That's the world that I try and create. So for students, it's those that ask for the most feedback, that put in the most requests, ask the most questions, submit the most for coaching, that get the most support and guidance and input. And from that, the most progress and biggest outcomes. So that absolutely goes for you as well. Go ahead and ask. The more you ask, the more you are likely to get from me. So today, for this last podcast episode, I want to give you something that is really tangible and very specific. And to be honest, I was feeling like I should probably come up with something a little bit kind of meaningful to round out the year, something that seems to be kind of the done thing, something reflective or sharing gratitude or symbolic about the year or about taking a break in the coming weeks. But if you have come to know me even just a little bit for a short while, you will know that those bigger picture things are not something that are necessarily my strength. Not that I'm not grateful, not that I don't reflect or whatever it might be, but they tend to be the things that I actually get help with doing. They are not the things that I would put out as one of my strengths to help any of you with. And I also don't think that that is really what you are here for and what you come and tune in for. You are here most likely for specifics and actions and very tactical and tangible tips. And specifics and tangible is what I am good at. And I just had this one thing that I couldn't shift out of my head when I was considering this episode, knowing that it was going to be the last one for 2024. And the one thing that was just constantly in my head, and it's probably because I mentioned this recently on the webinar that I ran live a couple of weeks ago, and it's the thing that has been in my head as I have been doing all of the external exam marking, and that is the topic, wait for it, of losing marks. I know, very positive, very uplifting for the end of the year. I get it. Now, don't worry. I am going to make it positive and uplifting because you know that is also my thing, to show you how you and your team can take what might look like or even currently be a negative and turn it to your team's advantage. So stick with me, because the reason that this whole thing about losing marks, specifically the reason for losing marks, is, I think, worth sharing right now, because I know that there are a lot of end-of-year exams and tests and assessments that are coming back to your team or have already come back for a lot of students right now. And rather than kind of sweep them under the 2024 carpet or just give them a cursory review, I would love for you and your team to just consider doing one thing for any, or ideally every, task or even a specific question within an exam or a particular assessment. Because I promise that just focusing on this one thing that I'm going to share will make a huge difference to how your team views and approaches their study, their assignments, their essays, and their exams from now on. In particular, how they approach them, prepare for them, or revise for them, and how they use practice questions or practice papers, and specifically how you and they choose to train or prepare for things going forwards, which I will get to in just a moment. So first, I'm going to tell you my observations on this, and then hopefully you can use my experience to take a proactive and productive look at this with your team. So first of all, I will say that when I review or critique any student's work or provide coaching or feedback, I look at both where they did and where they didn't get marks, and specifically why they did and didn't. Because remember, it's all about considering why when we're reviewing and asking how when we're looking forwards at how to tackle something that's coming up or that they've been set. So how do I achieve that criteria? How do I respond to that command? How do I show the skill or knowledge in the right way if we're looking forwards? But why when we're reviewing and reflecting? So for this example, I'm only going to talk about the why, because we are going to be reviewing and critiquing. And specifically, we're going to focus in on just one thing: why certain marks were missed or lost. Like I said, it is important to also consider the marks that were gotten and how and why they were gotten, but I'm just going to talk today on why marks were lost. And I have just one question for you and your team to consider, and it's this. For any particular question or criteria where they didn't get full marks, answer this. Was that down to a lack of subject knowledge? Or was that down to not responding to the way the question was asked in the way that the mark scheme required? In other words, was it down to knowledge or application of that knowledge? Remember, the study success formula is knowledge plus application equals success. So was it down to a lack of subject knowledge or a lack of skill or understanding in how to apply that knowledge in a way that ticked those boxes in the mark scheme? Now, if you have not heard me talk much about this before, go back to right at the start, episode 1 of the podcast. If this resonates and you're thinking it might be more down to the application than the subject knowledge, then definitely check out episode 1, the study success formula. Because in my experience, over the past 14 years of being an external examiner, a coursework moderator, a referee marker, this balance is 80-20. Around 80% of the marks lost or missed in any assessment or exam are down to the student not knowing how to actually achieve the criteria, or not having the skill of showing the information required in the right way or at the right level. And only around 20% of the marks that were lost are because the student just didn't know the answer. They either didn't know the facts or they wrote down incorrect information. And remember, this is just out of the marks lost. So let's say your teen got 15 out of 20 on their essay. Out of those 5 marks that they didn't get, how many of those were lost because they didn't know certain information that they needed to include, or they wrote something that was just plain wrong? It was incorrect information. And how many out of those 5 marks were lost because your teen just wasn't quite able to meet some of those very top descriptors on the mark scheme? Like they had good or appropriate evidence, but it wasn't considered to be a discerning selection of evidence. Or they had analysis, but it wasn't detailed and sophisticated analysis. Or they discussed the question, but they hadn't fully answered the question. And if it was something around giving more detail, was it that more information was required and they didn't know it? Or was it that that information needed to be conveyed in a different way that showed more depth and detail and discussion? Now, let's take an exam. Let's say they got 70% on their science exam. Out of the 30% of marks that they didn't get, what proportion were because they just didn't know the answer, didn't have the subject knowledge that they needed in order to respond? And you can do this, like I said, for the whole exam paper, but you could just do it for very specific individual questions. And if you really want to go to town on this, that's exactly what I would consider doing. Almost like make a tally chart as you go through the paper for each question where a mark or marks were lost. Have a little K and an A. Knowledge, was it down to knowledge not known, or was it down to a lack of application? Now, my guess would be that more of the marks lost were down to not properly knowing precisely what the wording of the question was demanding in their response, and or precisely what the mark scheme required. This can be such a valuable, enlightening exercise to do, even for just one assessment task. And I promise it would take about 5, maximum 10 minutes. And the beauty of this is not just about looking back on something that's already been done, that, let's face it, they're never going to have to do that exact exam question or essay ever again. But the beauty of it is that it informs you and your teen as to what will give them most bang for buck, what will most move the needle for them going forwards. Is the most beneficial thing for them going to be learning and revising more and more subject knowledge? Or is it going to be about gaining the skills of exam technique, getting savvy with mark schemes, being strategic in their essay writing, being able to hit the top criteria, being able to predict the mark scheme just from reading the question, being able to identify not just the topic of an extended response or essay question, but just as importantly, being able to identify the focus of that question, exactly what it's requiring them to do and how to respond and in what way, at what level. Now, getting to 100% on any task or exam paper will definitely require both excellent knowledge and excellent skills of application. But let's face it, most students are not aiming for 100% on everything. Now, I know a few of them are, and that's fine as well. But almost all students that I work with are aiming to either just increase their results by a little bit or by a lot, or even just keep at what might already be excellent results, but do it in a much more streamlined and efficient way. And if either of those are your teen, then discovering this ratio and which side of the equation is bigger will give them the best chance of doing that in the fastest and most effective way. So I really encourage your teen to do a review of even just one task or even just one question on an exam paper as they round out this year before they down those pens and laptops for Christmas. Just do this one thing to take them forwards into next year with a lot more clarity and awareness. So just look at marks lost and consider what portion of those marks are down to not properly answering the question or not meeting what is on the mark scheme versus what portion is down to not knowing the subject content well enough. And then if you're looking as the parent to support your teen going forwards, then this is going to be super helpful to you. Because if it's subject knowledge that is mostly holding them back, then you know that that's where you might want to spend your time or possibly money and effort, maybe on a subject tutor, maybe on additional subject resources, or having your teen find time to work further with their teacher. And if it's the skills of applying knowledge, then I would definitely encourage you to check out the 10-week grade transformation program, because that is where I will train your teen in the 6 elements of exam technique, how to master mark schemes, how to understand the top level of cognitions of evaluate and analyze and what they really mean, and how to actually discuss, how to effectively note take, how to actively revise, how to use past papers and practice questions in really strategic ways rather than just practicing answering the questions, which can be really time consuming and doesn't always give the most effective outcomes. Now, the 10-week program is open for enrollment at all times, yes, even over the holidays and even over Christmas, so that you can choose the timing that best works for your teen. You can find more information at www.gradetransformation.com/join, and I will put that direct link into the show notes so you can just click on it and go straight there. But the first step, as with anything, is building that clarity and awareness. So taking stock of marks lost and figuring out, and I will say it is not hard to figure this out, why those marks were missed is a brilliant way to build awareness around this. So there you go, as promised, something super tangible and actionable to round out the year that actually does involve quite a bit of reflection, even if it is very much assessment-based reflection rather than life or year reflection. But most importantly, a way to turn those marks lost, something that could be a negative, into a way to get ahead and get an advantage going forwards for your teen. So here's to a fantastic final couple of weeks of 2024 for you and your teen, and an even more fantastic 2025 ahead. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any friends or family who you think would also find this podcast helpful, I'd just be so grateful if you could pay this forward by sending them a screenshot or the link. This podcast is on all of the main podcast apps, so they'll easily be able to find it. I'll be back here to kick off next year in late January, so have a wonderful break, and I will see you back here soon. If I don't see you, or more specifically your teen, in the 10WGT over the holidays. Take care, have a wonderful break. I'll see you soon. Bye. If you're ready to have your teen achieve their best possible results with less stress, then I want to invite you to enroll them in the 10-week grade transformation program, where they're going to learn the key concepts, skills, and strategies to catapult their performance in assessments and exams. It's risk-free. They either achieve bigger and better results with a whole lot more confidence in 10 weeks, or we refund you in full. Just head over to www.rocksolidstudy.com/program, and I'll see you there.